Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulihil Kareem. Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah alladhi arsala rasulahu bil huda wa dinil haqq liyuzhirahu ala ad-din kulli wallahu karihal mushrikun. Wa ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika lahu wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abdahu wa rasuluh. Amma ba'd. Ya ayyuhal hadirin, ittaqullah, ittaqullah, ittaqullah. Inna Allaha ma'al muttaqin. Inshallah, today's khutbah is a continuation of last week's khutbah. The subject matter is Islamophobia, a subject that we can no longer avoid. These are extraordinary times. Looking back at it perhaps 100 years from now, historians will record as a bend in human history. Last week we considered several bends in human history and in Islamic history, and we looked at how the Muslim Ummah was able to overcome the challenges posed by those events. We looked at the passing away of our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and how the Sahaba evolved the institution of the Khilafah. We looked at the most powerful question perhaps that was ever asked in history, the question that was put before Hazrat Ali and Hazrat Usman radiallahu anhu after the passing away of Hazrat Umar radiallahu anhu, namely, will you follow the Quran, the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the ijma of the two sheikhs? We looked at the development of fiqh and the ebullience of Islamic culture, which integrated inputs from the East and the West, the age of hikmah. We looked at the onset of the age of Tasawwuf, the destruction of Baghdad and the Mongols, and later on, the rigidity that developed within the Islamic body politic, the age of colonialism, efforts of reconstruction down to our modern times. The modern times are driven by technology and by economics. The Islamophobia that we see is more a reflection of the economic currents in the world than anything else. It takes on a religious character for reasons that we cannot go into in this khutbah. The movement of capital around the world has exacerbated the focus and the concentration of wealth in the hands of fewer and fewer people. As you travel in the world, you can see that it doesn't matter whether in China or India or America or Europe, it's the same story. And secondly, the historical movement of economic power to Asia, which is where it rested up until the 17th century. We covered all of that in the last khutbah. Today, inshallah, we will discuss very briefly the principle of ijtihad, that is the dynamic principle, and how the Islamic civilization is going to overcome the challenges that we face currently. It is said that a people without vision must perish. Islam is a great civilization. It has a vision that has been given to it by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself through the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And ijtihad is the creative basis to apply the injunctions of the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet to develop an ijma. It is a continuous, unceasing struggle, intellectual struggle to apply the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet to evolve ijma, the consensus of the community, as the Prophet ﷺ said, my community, my ummah, will collectively not make an error. The origin of ijma goes back to the earliest periods of Islamic history. The examples that were just offered now, namely the ijma, the consensus that was developed upon the passing away of the Prophet ﷺ, and the selection of the first four Khalifa, and how that resulted also in the differences of opinion That was an example of ijma too. Especially the period of Hazrat Umar radiallahu anhu, which was a unique period in Islamic history, because all that Islamic civilization became later was but a reflection of the achievements of this great man, Hazrat Umar radiallahu anhu. And the injunctions, the decisions that were taken by the ijma of the Sahaba during the time of Hazrat Umar radiallahu anhu became the basis of the Maliki fiqh in later years. Now, if we look back and examine the later years, the 13th century and onwards, they also have something to teach us, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran that history is a sign from Allah. It is not a compendium of who did what to whom and what happened, who won the war. No, that is not what history is. History is a sign from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, I will show you my signs on the horizon within your own self until you have certainty of faith. Signs within yourselves are the signs of faith that comes to us with our ruh, that comes to us through the sunnah of our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Kullun amana billahi wa malaikatihi wa kutubihi wa rusulihi la nufarriqu bayna ahadin min rusulihi, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has taught us. But the expansion of it, the application of it in history is a sign, a divine sign. And that approach to history and to nature, which means science, differentiates Islamic science and Islamic history from other sciences and other historical processes. So how did the Muslims of later years apply the ijma to the collective problems that they faced? Recall in the 13th century, when the Islamic world was overrun by the Mongols. Almost all of the Islamic world, except for the Sultanate of Delhi and the Mamluk Sultanate of Cairo, was overrun. 90% of the people perished. The Islamic jurisprudence, the Sharia, was replaced by the Mongol Rasa. All the cities disappeared. Baghdad was destroyed. How did the Muslims rise up to the challenge? They rose up to the challenge in two ways, and all I can do in this khutbah is to brief you so that we can go back and develop them, some of the young people in here, later on, if they so wish to. It's a two-pronged response to it. One was the response of falling back upon the innate spirituality of Islam, that later on used to be called tasawwuf. It was the period when the spirituality of Islam not only overcame the challenge of the Mongols and converted them, but took Islam to India, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Indonesia, Malaysia, Sub-Saharan Africa, and to Europe, so that the core of Islam, which today constitutes only about 20% of the Islamic world, became what it is today. And the center of gravity of the Islamic world moved from Cairo and Damascus and Baghdad to Lahore and Delhi and Kuala Lumpur. That's what happened in the 13th century. And the other response was the development of akhlaq. In the year 1273, a famous treatise written by Nazeer al-Tusi, great scientist, but at the same time he was a great sociologist too. Recall, the Islamic scholars were not just one-dimensional scholars as it is the case today. There were people who had studied not just the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet. There were experts in mathematics, experts in physics, experts in logic, experts in architecture, experts in locution. This man was one of the greatest in the 13th century, Nazeer al-Tusi. He wrote Akhlaq al-Nasiri, the development of akhlaq, which became the cornerstone later on in the Mughal Empire, in the Indian subcontinent, and in the Ottoman Empire, took place through the foundation laid by Nazeer al-Tusi. Then later, in the 16th century, Suleiman the Magnificent of Turkey, he laid the basis of the Ottoman Empire. And later yet, in the 17th century, the Futuhat of Aurangzeb in the subcontinent laid the foundation of the application of ijtihad in that part of the world. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also teaches us in the Quran, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, Hal yastawi al-a'ma wal-basir, afala tatafakkarun. those endowed with vision the same as those who are not endowed with vision? Will you not then think, reflect? What happened to the Islamic civilization is what happens to people who lose their eyesight when they develop glaucoma. Many of you are doctors, highly trained people in here. You know, in most forms of glaucoma, what happens is that you lose your peripheral vision, and gradually the vision contracts until all you see is a monochromatic, one single light, and the curtain closes and you don't see anything. So, as you travel again through the world, in India, Pakistan, Indonesia, Africa, so I meet people who lost their vision through glaucoma 10 years ago, 15 years ago. And the way they remember the world is the way it used to be 15 years ago, not the way it is right now. The same thing happens to civilizations too. In the sense that Islamic civilization became rigid. It gradually folded upon itself. And the horizons at one time, which included the injunctions of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I will show you my science on the horizon, which is the science and history, and within yourselves, which is tasawwuf, and the injunctions, the following, the diktats of the Quran and Sunnah of the Prophet. Gradually, it became monochromatic, single ray. This is the way it is. On the right is halal, haram, kufr, bid'ah, shirk. This is what has happened to Islamic civilization. It became monochromatic. It somehow imploded upon itself. Then in the 19th and the 20th century, there were attempts that were made to somehow reform. That's not the right word. Perhaps rediscover or reconstruct Islam. Allama Iqbal in the subcontinent, he made an attempt. Ali Shariati in Iran made his attempt. Zia Gokul in Turkey, he made his attempt. Maududi in India, Pakistan, he made his attempt. And similar attempts were made in Egypt and other parts, and time is too short to go into the details of it. These were attempts of reconstruction, somehow bringing back to the fore the breadth and the vision of the Islamic civilization. Now bring it back to the American context, to the context of Islamophobia. Broadly speaking, it means the fear of Islam, fear of Muslims. Let us not deny it, it is there. If you deny it, it's as if you have developed that myopia, you've developed that vision that cannot see, it is there. Now we have to develop a response to it. The American context is the following. America is a nation of immigrants. It is like a tossed salad. People have come here from all over the world. It is not one nation, it is many nations in one, with a common constitution and a Bill of Rights, and the federal laws, the state laws and rules and regulations. That's what unites us together, and the structures that have developed. And then when you look at ourselves, the Muslim Ummah in the United States, it also consists of multiple layers of tossed salad, if you will. Roughly 25% of the Muslims in America are born in the United States. Roughly a third are from the subcontinent. Roughly 20% are from the Arabic-speaking countries. And the rest are from the rest of the world. So that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has brought us all together. The Prophet sowed the seed in Medina, which grew into a big tree. And out of it came out flowers. One flower went to India, another to Indonesia, a third one to Europe, and a fourth one to sub-Saharan Africa, and one landed here in this new world. And it has grown into a small plant. It's a struggling plant. I have shared with you in the past that this is not the first time Islam has come to America. This is the fourth wave. The first wave came with the Africans in the 16th and 17th century, disappeared for reasons that we know historically. The second wave came towards the end of the 19th century when the British and the Americans brought some camel riders from Egypt and Pakistan to ride the camels in the deserts of California. That too disappeared. The third wave came after the First World War, upon the defeat of the Ottoman Empire from Syria, Eastern Mediterranean. That too disappeared. This is the fourth wave. When I first came to the United States in 1960-61, the quotas were limited, 100 per country. And in the 3 or 4 years that I spent at Caltech, I met only one other Muslim. And this was an Air Force captain that had been sent by the Pakistani Air Force to be trained at Caltech. Now, alhamdulillah, there is a community, but this community is heterogeneous. And how can we bring this community together so that we can face up to the challenges that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has presented to us. A challenge is an opportunity. It is not an occasion to shrivel and disappear. It is an opportunity for us to grow as a civilization. A few things come to mind. One, recommendations to consider. First of all, forgiveness. Forgiveness is a very major, big attribute. It's an attribute of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the owner of forgiveness, and He forgives. There's so much injustice in the world. Let us not walk around with a chip on our shoulders, because so much of the difficulties that we face within our own souls comes from a feeling that injustice has been inflicted. Forgive. As Bulleh Shah of Pakistan said one time in the 17th century, he said, find someone to forgive so that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala may forgive you. Secondly, bury the hatchet internally. The Shia-Sunni feud, 1400 years, the longest running feud in human history. Is there a reason for it? It's historical, it is not religious. Bury the hatchet. Muslims are Muslims. As long as you say La ilaha illallah, Muhammad Rasulullah, you're a Muslim. Let history be bygone. Learn from history. Don't make it a burden on your shoulders. Third, protect your children. There is bullying going on. Talk to your children in the evenings. I know we are all busy. I used to work too up until 20 years ago. We are busy. We must engage with your children. Find out if they're facing problems. Most Muslim children are facing problems. There is no question about it. Do not neglect your children. You lose the future, and we may become the fourth wave that has disappeared from this continent. Then, protect your women folk. If you look at the harassment that is going on in the United States, 80% of the individual harassment is against women, and that's because of the covering that they have on their head. Protect your ladies, protect your sisters, protect your wives, protect your daughters, protect your granddaughters. And that's an issue that we need to discuss together to evolve the ijma. Then, externally, increase your engagement. Engage with the blacks, engage with the Hispanics, engage with the whoever it is who is willing to work with us to bring justice, because justice is the core of Islam. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu kunu qawwamina bil qist shuhada'a lillah. Be witnesses before Allah and stand up for justice no matter who it is for. Engagement. Increase your engagement. By the same token, increase your disengagement too. This may seem contradictory, but I'm saying something that is very important. There are issues in the world about which we cannot do anything. We can pray for them, but we cannot do anything. Do not bring those issues so those issues overwhelm you. It's a small nascent community. Lower your profile. This is the time when you have a nail that sticks out, it gets hammered down. It is coming. These khutbahs normally have to do with the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet. Now, these khutbahs by necessity have to do with the community because it has to do with the survival of the community. I see, as a student of history and science, the possibility that this wave may also disappear unless we evolve creative responses to the challenges that we face. Then, lastly, it is ideational challenge. We have an opportunity to evolve modes of expressing our Islamicity in ways that was never done before, in ways that are emotionally appealing. For instance, what is the true purpose of Islam? I repeat, what is the true purpose of Islam? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala defines this in the Quran. The true purpose of Islam is prayer and service, our service and prayer. Something we need to discuss and evolve at ijma. And then the evolution of an Islamic culture. The response of the Muslims of the 13th century was to evolve a school of akhlaq. The response of the Muslims of the 21st century, especially in the United States, should be the evolution of a Muslim culture. This culture, we have the ingredients of it. We don't grasp onto what it is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us, what our forefathers have given us. The culture is in a way we relate to other people. This culture will use Maulana Rumi as our archetype for a poet, who is the most widely read poet in the United States, not Shakespeare. This culture will use the Taj Mahal as our archetype for architecture. Who but the Muslims build the Taj Mahal? This culture will use the arabesque as the archetype for art. Who but the Muslims invented arabesque? This culture will use Al-Khwarizmi, and yes, Newton, and Einstein, and others as the archetypes for science. Who but the Muslims invented science? Who but Al-Khwarizmi came up with the idea, the methodology for writing algorithms? Most of you are computer scientists. You know what an algorithm is. And on and on and on. You are the inheritors of a global civilization, a marvelous civilization, a civilization of love, a civilization of accomplishment, a civilization of science, a civilization of architecture and art. There is nothing to look down upon, but we need to exercise that wisdom that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us through the Quran, the hikmah, apply it with hikmah, so that this generation, the fourth wave that has come to the United States, does not only not vanish, but it becomes a prototype for future generations, a prototype for minorities all over the world, a prototype that historians will talk about 300 years from now. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulihil Kareem. My khutbahs, most of the time, are directed towards the young people. It's always a matter of privilege and pleasure to talk to young people because we see the future through them. That's the energy. That's where we will be 20, 30, 40 years into this. And if there's something that people like me can do, share, do not ever hesitate. This is directed towards the young people to contact me or contact us, and inshallah we'll get them clarified. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Inna Allaha wa malaikatahu yusalluna 'alan nabi ya ayyuhalladhina amanu sallu 'alayhi wa sallimu taslima. Allahumma salli 'ala sayyidina Muhammad wa 'ala ali Muhammad kama sallayta 'ala Ibrahim wa 'ala ali Ibrahim innaka Hamidum Majid. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Allahumma ansurna nasran 'azizan waftah lana fathan qariba. Allahumma ij'alna min ladunka waliyya. Allahumma ij'alna min ladunka sultanan nasira. واقبض السحر والسلامة والعفو والعافية والنصرة علينا وعلى الحجاج والزوار والغزاة والمجاهدين والمقيمين والمسافرين بالبركة وبركة والجبرة وقيمة محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم أجمعين وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون.